MI6 has given us the go-ahead on the mission.
Let's wait until the last truck passes. I'll take the guard on the left, you take the one on the right.
That's the big one, I guess. At least from the Activision James Bond games. A remake of the classic GoldenEye game, which I haven't played, based on the movie which once again I didn't watch. But I enjoyed the A Quantum of Solace game quite a bit and was pleasantly surprised. This here, well, it starts quite promising. In a tutorial mission in the training camp we get familiar with the shooting and they immediately make something right. We learn some of the basics in the game, but to be honest we don't need much more than the shooting. I want also to note that they took quite some effort with the shooting. It feels good, there are differences between the weapons and it feels like a progression, as there are various weapons throughout the game. You start with AKs and MP5s. Then there are MP9s, SCARs, sniper rifles, different pistols, shotguns, mostly pump action, but at the end also automatic shotguns, M4s and even an RPG-7 later on. All of them feel quite good, there are no special weapons or gadgets, except for the smartphone, the silencer for the pistol and later on night vision goggles. The game also surprisingly has regular reloads and empty reloads, which is effort I didn't expect. Let me quickly explain what I mean with that. Regular reloads are performed with guns, which still have bullets in their clip or in the chamber. For these reloads you just throw out the mag and put another mag in. An empty reload is performed when a gun has no bullets left in the mag or the chamber. For that the mag is thrown out, a new one is inserted and the gun is loaded again. Unfortunately they don't count the bullet in the chamber as an additional bullet though. There are also no grenades for Bond this time around. The story seems to follow the plot of the movie relatively closely, I guess, but all characters look different. Instead of Pierce Brosnan as Bond, it's Daniel Craig. Everyone else is portrayed by the respective voice actor or default character from any RPG character creator. The story starts in Russia, where 007 and 006 are on a mission to investigate a military facility, which is supposed to have a secret superweapon. 006 gets captured and shot by an evil general man, but Bond can escape. Later Bond is on another mission and gets into contact with a Russian gangster. When the gangster gets killed in his own nightclub, Bond has to shoot his way out of the club and follows the lead of an arms deal. This leads him on the trail of the conspiracy, weapon trades and the secret weapon which he was investigating years ago. This weapon turns out to be an EMP bomb. The story isn't that interesting to be honest, at least for me. It's another Call of Duty clone but with James Bond, and I have to say that most of it is quite a lot of fun. The shooting feels good as I mentioned before, the level design is generally well done and the areas are varied enough to keep the player interested. Some of the guns also have grenade launchers, which are causing a lot of damage if they hit the enemy, which is easier said than done. I played it on a higher difficulty but not classic, which removes the regenerating health and makes it necessary to collect body armor. The enemies don't feel much tougher later on, but once again the number is making things more difficult. Unfortunately there are also time limits towards the end, in which you will need to complete certain tasks or else you are dead. Overall the game is pretty cool and I would almost go so far to rate it higher than Quantum of Solace, but only almost. Unfortunately the cover system doesn't always work and walls are not always recognized as cover. I died a couple of times because I was shot through walls, which is an absolutely no-go. This is absolutely terrible for an FPS and there's another big blunder which puts the game down quite a bit. The end boss is one of the worst end bosses I have ever experienced. The boss himself is the spongiest bullet sponge which I have ever shot at, and I played a bunch of Resident Evil games last year, and I have played Soldier of Fortune Payback, so I know what I'm talking about. But that's not all, it gets worse. After you shoot him for a while he calls reinforcements, which you have to kill and then shoot him a bit more again. This is not communicated in any way to the player. This repeats a couple of times and then an attack helicopter appears, which immediately kills you when you are on the balcony or in his view from the balcony or one of its windows. And then you have to keep shooting the end boss until he leaves the room. The helicopter isn't defeatable by the way, so you have just to avoid him somehow. There are only like 1 or 2 spots which can be used to avoid the helicopter shooting at you. And eventually you also fight against the end boss in a long QTE. Except for these two big issues, it's a good campaign though. It's varied in regarding the locations as I mentioned, and also has some QTEs which aren't that difficult to change up the gameplay. There is also a level in which you drive a tank. It's a bit tough but manageable and a nice change of pace. There are also some side objectives in most levels, like collecting evidence or destroying specific objects. These add to the replay value and are mandatory for certain difficulties. You can also shoot Janus emblems, but I have to say both of these things are a bit of a mixed bag. For one, you have to use your phone for most of the side missions, and that's not much fun. You move slow and have to find certain objects and have to keep them in the frame. The emblems are also pretty well hidden, and I don't know if it unlocks anything if you find and shoot them, except maybe for a trophy. There's also some more side content in the form of MI6 missions, which are attack, defense or stealth. But those didn't really interest me, so I only checked out the first one, but there's more content. James Bond GoldenEye Reloaded is a good game, kind of, but it has some big issues. Getting shot through walls shouldn't happen in any shooter, and it's not acceptable in any way. The terrible end boss and showdown are an absolute shame and leave the player with the worst of the game in the end. But there's enough fun to be had otherwise in the rest of the game. And with that said, I will give GoldenEye Reloaded a 7 out of 10, and it's closer to an 8 than a 6. And the next Bond game I will play, well, that's gonna be something.